You're 23, and you work at a check cashing place on the corner of a street that has 3 check cashing places on it. Yours is the one with the broken O in the sign out front. $13 an hour. You've been here 14 months. You count other people's money all day. You slide it under bulletproof glass. You charge them 3% to access their own paycheck. You smile and say, "Have a good one," and they walk out, and the next person steps up and you do it again. Take home is $1,540 a month. Rent is $875. Car insurance is $130. Phone is $65. You owe $4,200 on a credit card you opened for a hospital bill 2 years ago when you didn't have insurance. The minimum payment is $94 a month. The interest is eating everything. You've been paying for 18 months, and the balance has gone down $400. The math on that takes a second to absorb. $200 left after everything. $200 is not a number. $200 is a condition. You know the threshold, $10,000. Any cash deposit over $10,000 triggers a federal filing. Every teller, every cashier, every person behind every counter in every financial institution in the country knows that number. You were trained to watch for it. A man named Gerald comes in on a Thursday. Polo shirt, leather portfolio. Looks like someone who sells commercial real estate. He tips you $40 on a routine cash transaction. Nobody tips at a check cashing place. You notice. You don't say anything. Third Thursday, Gerald asks if you have a minute after your shift. He explains it simply. He has cash from a vending operation. Too much volume at once looks irregular. He needs it deposited across multiple accounts in amounts that don't trigger reporting requirements. Under $10,000 each time. Your cut is $200 per deposit, twice a week. $400 a week, $1,600 a month on top of your $1,540. Your credit card balance gone in 3 months. You tell Gerald you'll think about it. You don't think about it. You already know. First deposit, $8,400 in cash. Gerald slides it under the glass on a Tuesday like a normal transaction. You count it. You process it into Sunrise Vending, LLC. $200 in an envelope under the counter at the end of your shift. The system logs the transaction. Nobody reads the logs. That's what you tell yourself every Tuesday and Thursday for the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks, $2,400 in envelopes. Credit card balance at $2,900. You can see the bottom for the first time in 2 years. The bottom has a number on it, and the number is getting smaller. Gerald says he wants to talk about expansion. Level 2, the structure. Gerald explains what you're already inside. A smurfing operation, one large sum of money broken into many small deposits made by many different people at many different institutions so that no single transaction ever crosses the reporting threshold and no single institution ever sees the full picture. Gerald has 6 Smurfs at check cashing windows and bank teller counters across the city. Each one processes deposits under $10,000. The cash moves through 12 accounts at 7 institutions and comes out the other side looking like organic business revenue. You are one node in a network you are only now beginning to see the shape of. Gerald wants you to recruit. He says there is a woman at the counter next to yours who looks tired in a specific way. That means the math isn't working for her either. Her name is Priya. You approach Priya on a Wednesday during the slow hour between 2 and 3. You don't say structuring. You don't say smurfing. You say you know a guy who needs a favor and pays well. You say the word useful the same way Gerald said it to you. Priya does the math in about 3 seconds. Priya says yes. Gerald pays you a $500 recruiting fee. You stare at your name on an envelope full of cash, and something shifts. Not guilt. Something more structural than guilt. You are not the person receiving the favor anymore. You are a layer in the system. You have depth now. Depth means exposure. 4 months in, credit card paid off completely. $3,100 in a shoebox under your bed because you don't know where else to put it. Gerald mentions someone above him wants to move to the next phase. He says the next phase is cleaner. He says the next phase is where real money gets made. You drive home and sit in your car in the parking lot of your apartment complex for 20 minutes. Not because you're scared, because you're calculating. The math keeps winning the argument before the argument finishes. Level 3, the front. The next phase is a restaurant. Salazar Kitchen, strip mall, health inspection certificate, Yelp page with 11 reviews, liquor license, a hostess named Brianna, who is the only real employee and who believes she works at a restaurant that is simply struggling to find its footing. Salazar Kitchen reports $28,000 in monthly revenue. Real foot traffic on a busy night generates maybe $4,000 of that. The remaining $24,000 is Gerald's cash moved through fake receipts logged into the POS system as meals that were never ordered by customers who were never there. You become the bookkeeper. You match the fake receipts to the cash deposits. You make the numbers reconcile. You learned double-entry bookkeeping from a YouTube playlist over 3 weekends because Gerald needed someone detail-oriented and you needed to be worth more than a smurf. Being worth more means knowing more. Knowing more means more exposure. You understand this and you do it anyway because the pay is $3,500 a month cash, and $3,500 a month changes the entire architecture of your life. You move to a 1-bedroom with central air. You buy a real bed frame. The shoebox becomes a fireproof lockbox from an office supply store. The lockbox has $22,000 in it by month 3. You've been meaning to figure out what to do with it. The lockbox is the most important problem you have never solved. Gerald tells you the operation moves $400,000 a month. Your cut is 1.2%. You do not ask about the other 98.8%. You have one rule left. Don't pull that thread. One afternoon, a real customer walks in, a woman and her daughter. The sign looked nice. Brianna panics because there is no kitchen and no cook and no food. They leave. You sit with the ledger. You finish it. You go home. 3 weeks later, a FinCEN analyst in Virginia runs a pattern query on cash-intensive businesses with revenue inconsistent with their foot traffic. Salazar Kitchen appears in the output. The output gets escalated to a financial crimes task force. The task force pulls Gerald's accounts. Gerald's accounts pull Sunrise Vending. Sunrise Vending pulls your employee ID from 14 months of transaction logs. You don't know any of this. You are at home on a Sunday evening looking at the lockbox and thinking about whether to open another savings account. Level 4. The thread. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division joins the task force and brings a forensic accountant named Sharon. Sharon finds your gap in 11 days. Your declared income is $33,800 a year. Your actual expenditures suggest a person spending closer to $68,000. The gap is $34,200. The gap has no explanation. The gap is your name on an indictment. They flip Priya first. Priya has 2 children and a lawyer who explains the difference between 8 months and 8 years very clearly. Priya gives them Gerald. She gives them your name. She gives them the Wednesday conversation in the slow hour between 2 and 3. Gerald says nothing. His silence doesn't matter. Dominic cooperates the same afternoon they knock on his door. Dominic gives them the operation, the accounts, the layering structure, and your role managing the ledger. He gives them your address. He gives them the name of the office supply store where you bought the fireproof lockbox. They come on a Thursday morning, 2 agents and a local detective. The lockbox has $22,000 in it. You have no document in the world that explains $22,000 in a lockbox. They also find your copy of the ledger. You kept it because you are detail-oriented. Detail-oriented people keep records. Records are what build federal cases. The charges are money laundering, conspiracy, and structuring. The conspiracy charge connects you to everything above you and everything below you. The money came from a distribution network operating in 3 cities. You are now connected to a drug trafficking conspiracy without ever having touched a drug. Your lawyer says the word substantial. Substantial cooperation is the only path to a sentence you can survive. You give them everything. 4 sessions over 2 weeks. You cry once during the second session. You are describing the ledger, and you realize mid-sentence that you were proud of it. You built a clean, accurate record of a criminal enterprise, and you were proud of how clean it was. The crying is about that. Gerald gets 9 years. Dominic gets 6. Priya gets 18 months. You get 3 years and 4 months. Your mother drives home from the facility alone. She stops at a gas station 20 minutes away and sits in the parking lot before she gets back on the road. You don't know this until she tells you in a letter 2 years later. She says she sat there thinking about the $200 left at the end of every month and how she used to worry about you back then. She says she wishes she had worried differently. She doesn't know what differently would have looked like. She just knows it would have looked like something other than this. The check cashing place fills your position in a week. The broken O in the sign is still broken when you get out. You drive past it on the way to your brother's couch, where you'll sleep for the first 4 months of your new life. You are not the same person who stood behind that glass and counted other people's money. You are the person who learned what money could do when no one was watching. And then you learned what watching looks like when it finally turns around. If this changed how you think about the money in your pocket, subscribe. The next one is worse.